Oh my God, everybody. First podcast in person. What a day. We actually figured out technologically how to do it. Welcome, everybody, if you are new to The Sports Scoop, the Sports Scoop podcast, I guess you could say. Today, we have a ton of hot NFL topics. We have a mailbag as well from you guys. So make sure you guys do stay tuned to the end of the episode because I'm sure we'll be doing this again. And if you are a new viewer, we would love to see your questions. Cian McDermott, Charlie Nidell, Suraj Kadali. Today we're going over some NFL. Obviously, Week 13 just ended to Week 14, but make sure you guys go follow us on social media. We post also more like YouTube-y videos, if you guys know what I mean. Shorter stuff, but this is our first time doing a podcast, so we hope you guys do enjoy. Going over Patriots, they are now the first seed in the AFC. Lions won a game. AFC North and how it is very confusing. Teams that need a quarterback, ranking them from 1 to 5. We're going over the Dolphins win streak and our opinions on Tua Tagovailoa, and then we're going to be answering your guys' questions you got us over on Instagram. So make sure you guys stay tuned. And let's get into the podcast.
All right, let's hop into our first topic. It's an interesting one, and that's the Patriots being the first seed in the AFC going into a bye week. What did you see, first off, from that Bills game? Mac Jones with just 3 throws all game and 41 carries. What do we see from the Patriots in that one?
I don't know about you. We look at the weather, obviously, going into that game. It was, windy, snowy, and then when the game happened, it definitely got a little bit better. But, it is what it is, 19 yards. I think contributing this game, the win towards Mac Jones, I would pump the brakes on a little bit. Look. You looked at what Sean McDermott said, talking about the coaching. I would say it was outcoached. Definitely, I think it came down to the Patriots have a lot of running backs. The rotation they have had with Ramondre Stevenson, with Bolden.
Damian Harris.
Damian Harris obviously had that breakaway touchdown. That's been why this team's been good. And as much as we've been doing draft last year, this Bills team does not have a running back. We thought they should have went and taken one last year, and they didn't. And unfortunately, Singletary and Moss just aren't their guys. So I think it came down to that a little bit. But you look at the stats of the game. The Patriots didn't have much better stats. Bills had more first downs, more third down conversions. So I would say when it comes down to dominance, I would not say that there was a huge separation per se between these two teams. And I would say the next matchup between the two will be very interesting because I think this Bills team is definitely right there. It's interesting that it was an interesting game. It was a good game. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think though one of the concerning things if you're like a Bills fan is that how were the Bills not able to stop the run all game when you knew that that's all they were going to do? They only threw the ball 3 times, as Charlie said, and they just didn't have an answer. I didn't really understand, because they don't have necessarily a bad run defense, but they don't have a great one. But Patriots just, with Ramondre Stevenson, with Damian Harris, even with Bolden at times, they just had their way. I think N'Keal Harry, he had that great block for that long Damian Harris touchdown.
That
punt,
I feel like we've seen that so much where a punt barely touches.
It just grazes him.
And they were like, oh yeah, it didn't hit him. Then they're like, wait a minute, it hit his helmet.
And I think also though I think he knew it hit him, but he still didn't go for it. I think he was hoping that maybe they wouldn't notice, but with the replay you got to be more careful with that. But overall, the Patriots were able to run the ball very efficiently. I think they have probably, in my opinion, a top 10 offensive line at this point in the season. We're struggling early on in the season, but they've really gotten it together. And I think David Andrews has been a big part of their win. Those guys up front have been huge for the Patriots and why they are currently the top seed. And it's been a very impressive start. I think their defense played very well. I think Judon, he had another really good game.
Great.
He's been
His
great.
His sack numbers are crazy.
Yeah, he's incredible.
Or 11 and a half, excuse me.
If it weren't for 2 amazing edge rushers, TJ Watt and Myles Garett, he could easily be in contention for Defensive Player of the Year. You got at linebacker, Dante Hightower has been a great.
And
Van Noy has been huge for them. Barmore on the defensive line has been a huge addition. And
quietly
Godchuk.
You look. They said
all the additions have been huge.
Davis Mills.
Jalen Mills.
Excuse me, from the Eagles. He was great. You look at all of their off-season ads, and Belichick again being a great coach. Charlie, in terms of I know we talked about the game. Belichick coach. We have another host on the channel. Dylan texted us this morning. Belichick is easily the best coach in the NFL, or the best coach of all time. We're like, really?
Thank you.
Quite
insightful.
Obviously. And I think this season has showed that. But Charlie, because we were talking about this before we got into the podcast in terms of coaching wise. Sean McDermott. You explain it.
It was an interesting interview with Sean McDermott. I'm not sure if it was after the game or this morning, but he seemed to say that he was out-coached while trying to say that he wasn't out-coached. He was trying to prove that he wasn't being out-coached, that they got lucky, they, were the more efficient team, which is just not true. The Patriots did almost nothing better than the Bills last night, yet came out on top, and in the process sort of admitted to being the worst coach last night. It was really interesting, and I don't know exactly what he was trying to say. I'm very confused by it. He's, I guess, not the best in front of camera.
He's not representing I'm the better McDermott in front of camera.
Oh, for sure. But I just think, and it's very interesting for me looking at the stats, because I didn't watch the whole game last night. I went to bed pretty early, but the Patriots did nothing better than the Bills except run the ball. And the Bills' leading tackler last night was Jordan Poyer, and coming down from safety, and he only had 8 tackles, even though the Patriots ran the ball 41 times. I believe more than that. Sorry, 46 times.
Yeah, 222 net rush yards.
222 yards.
99, and then 131 passing yards for the Bills to 19 for Mac Jones. He had 1 passing attempt going to half. I've never seen that in my
I don't think I've seen that.
In 3 quarters,
I feel like I saw him pass the ball more. But I guess
he dropped back. He scrambled 5 times.
Yeah, so maybe,
and I'm assuming he took a couple sacks.
Yeah.
No, he did not take any sacks.
I mean, at the end of the day, neither offense really played well. I mean, you look at red zone, 0% completion or getting the touchdown for the Patriots, and then the Bills were 1 of 4. So that Damon Harris touchdown. Again, those plays like that, you have to be so careful. Even when you have great safeties like Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, when you stack the box with both of your safeties. They had no support, great blocking. I mean, the Patriots have been fantastic at getting tight ends who can block. I think Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, I'm not sure if we talked about this, been fantastic at blocking. So that was a big reason why. I mean, it was a great run. You kind of knew that hole was open, and it was kind of a classic.
It's really interesting because when you look at it, if you take that run, I believe it was 64 yards. So then Damian Harris had 10 carries for just under 50 yards. Which is 9 carries for just under 50 yards, which is nothing impressive.
I mean, 5
and
yards
then, and when you look at it, you say, wow, the Patriots' run game was dominant. They had 222 yards, but it really wasn't, because Ramondre Stevenson only averaged just over 3 yards per carry. And he only ended up with 78 yards. On 24 carries.
It's the rotation that hurt the Bills.
The
Bills don't have a running back that they can rotate to. It's just Singletary, who's tiny.
And they only ended up running the ball 16, 24, 25 times, and 6 of those came from Josh Allen. And Singletary was not efficient on the ground. Zach Moss was not efficient. And they just really didn't do anything very well, the Bills, last night. And I think that's what it came down to.
And then I completely forgot the Breida fumble again.
But both teams fumbled, so it's like
right. And looking back at that fumble, when I looked at the replay, it was Breida's fault. But the commentators are like, when it gets very cold, it gets dry,
it's hard to hold on to.
It was like you need to have a pocket when it's cold like that to get it, and he held it like this and it went through. So I mean, again, looking at this game, this is not some game that you can talk. I mean, you can talk about any game very long, but I'm saying this was not a very high intense, high scoring game, which I think we all predicted. I'm not sure we said in our predictions video, but we knew this game would not be some high-scoring game. I guess maybe it could have, but both of these defenses have been fantastic. You'd argue the 2 best defenses right now. They've been fantastic. Yeah. So it was definitely, and I think looking at the next matchup, I think it's a Bills must-win going into this next.
They have to.
That was a big loss. That was a big loss that the Bills would have liked to win. I think they would rather won that game and then lost in the second matchup, but this was a big loss. I mean, the Patriots continue to separate. Quickly before we get into our next segment, we've gotten some questions about this. I would say probably the hottest question right now, something we've actually done a video on, in terms of the Patriots being contenders. What does this show you guys for the rest of the season for the Patriots that they go and beat the Bills?
For the Patriots, it's really interesting because, again, I think in terms of offensive talent, they probably have one of the least amount of offensive talent in terms of at least skill position.
Yeah, for sure.
And that could bode poorly for them in the playoffs when they go against teams that arguably have more talent.
But their defense is shut down.
Their defense is shut down, and even more important, they win in the trenches, especially on the offensive side. While you saw the offensive line, at times they would just dominate Buffalo. And I know Ramondre Stevenson did average only 3 yards per carry, but a couple of those were big losses, which really hampered his yards per carry. He was very effective the whole game, and I think kind of New England won in the trenches, and that's why they won the why they won the game. And I think if they can do that against possibly better defensive lines, like, I don't know, an example, Indianapolis, who have Darius Leonard and DeForest Buckner, I think they can easily get past anyone. But I think they're going to have to slightly make up for maybe the lack of talent at skill positions like receivers. I mean, they're not terrible at receiver, but they don't have any elite weapons.
It is the craziest thing. This Bills team is a carbon copy of the dynasty that won. Not a great offense, but players who can produce, like several receivers. You don't have one elite guy.
Yeah.
Good blocking tight ends, a good offensive line, a quarterback who's not that mobile. I mean, you look at who is the copy of Tom Brady. Obviously, no one's a copy of Tom Brady. It's Mac Jones.
Yeah.
And then a great defense. I mean, it's literally obviously not the same, but I mean, it's crazy how that kind of pans.
Where I actually compare this team to a team recently is the Niners team that went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It's a dominant defense, and they've got the pass rusher that Nick Bosa was and Matt Judon. And their offense, it's not a super talented quarterback, but a quarterback who can get the job done. Mm-hmm. Jimmy Garoppolo, Mac Jones. Nobody great in the receiving core. Obviously, the Niners had the George Kittle that the Patriots don't have.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a major difference. And that's why I don't think that the Patriots can go to the Super Bowl this year.
Okay.
I think that the farthest they'll make, I think the problem for them will be inexperience. And I know they've got that same rotation of running backs that the Niners team had. But instead of having a Garoppolo, who is also a New England quarterback, who had that point had been in the league for about 4 years. This is Mac Jones' rookie season. Is Ramondre Stevenson's rookie season. Damian Harris' second or third season.
Second, I think.
So it's really just not a very experienced team on the offensive side of the ball, and that's what's going to kill them when come playoff times.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, I think we'll get into the mailbag question. Again, this is our new set. I forgot to say in the beginning. We're going to do, when we do more podcasts, we're going to have because we're new and innovative. What we're going to do is we're going to have a topic that we make, obviously, when we plan out the podcast, and then midway through, we'll have your guys' mailbag question. So it's not like you just have to wait until the end to see it. So, I mean, it's basically just another topic, but the mailbag question we touch on not as heavily as the regular topics. But, Charlie, what is the first mailbag question? Again, guys, if you guys want to, even if we're not doing a podcast, we're not announcing, just ask the question on Instagram. We'll save it for the next podcast we have. So feel free to. The link for that is in the bio for our Instagram. Charlie, what's the first question?
So I'm going to use this one because we're on the subject of AFC playoffs right now, and that's, could the Ravens possibly miss out on playoffs? Suraj, I know you have an opinion on this one.
I mean, I don't think they will, but I think there's a very, very solid chance that they actually can miss the playoffs because I don't have their schedule up right now. I can look it up in just a second, but their schedule is not easy in the season. I know they play... Thank you. I know they play the Packers. I know they play the Rams.
Browns,
they play the
Packers, Bengals, Rams, Steelers.
Those are all easily losable games for them, especially the way they're playing.
Yeah.
They could have. I know they're 8-4. They don't deserve to be 8-4. They have
100%.
not been a good team this season.
I will say injury. I mean, the Marlon Humphrey is a killer.
That is a
injury.
killer.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the Ravens and you have LaRun, and then you have not many other people.
I mean, what I see is
I see. Just go right over your guys' head. You not see LaRun. Lamar.
I mean, I see Mark Andrews, I see Marquise Brown, but
right, and Bateman, who I love. You got me and Suraj, you know.
But he hasn't produced as much as we've wanted from him, and the defense hasn't produced as much as we thought they could.
Defense hasn't been terrible though.
They let up 20 points to Big Ben. 10 points against the Browns. The Browns have
letting
sucked.
up any points to Big Ben is.
I mean, to be fair, they've
31
got
against the
solid
Vikings,
offensive
22 against the Dolphins.
No, yeah, it's not been a great
41 to the Bengals. They just haven't looked that good.
Oh yeah, not at all. The secondary,
and especially without Marlon Humphrey.
I think the secondary is a 32nd ranked secondary in the NFL.
That's bad.
I'm pretty.
That's
sure.
dreadful. And now without Marlon Humphrey too, that's gonna be
their
hard.
style of press man coverage. I mean, how is that they're without their best corner, Marlon Humphrey? It's just
and the play against the Steelers to go for 2 just baffles me when you have Justin Tucker. That makes no sense. In a regular season game,
I like the call. I will tell you.
I was looking at it.
Interesting.
I was saying that, like, basically, I've heard people saying that, like, if you credit John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson for going for it on 4th down and it works, like they were giving credit for that. Like, he looks like a genius. They're saying everyone's saying, oh, what a great call. But then when it doesn't work out, it's like, oh, why didn't you kick the extra point? Personally,
it was a good play call.
I was more conservative. I would have gone for the extra point, but I don't think necessarily it's the worst call in the world, especially.
I actually disagree. I find it surprising that teams don't go for 2 more often in those close situations because, like, the question is, do you trust your team to get 2 yards? Like, when you have someone like Lamar, that's what I'm saying. When you have someone like Lamar Jackson on your team, do you not trust him to get you 2 yards to win you a football game? Mm-hmm. And he drew whoever the defensive end was out there and
Yeah.
made an all right throw to Mark Andrews. It wasn't the best of throws, but it also wasn't an uncatchable throw. And arguably, Mark Andrews should have caught that ball. It hit him in the hand. And he dropped it and didn't get in the end zone. But if he had caught it, if it was maybe a slightly better throw, he would have been in the end zone and they would have looked like geniuses. It's a 2-yard play. It's not that hard if you've got good offensive players like Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews on your team.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good point. Harbaugh's a great coach. This is not, let's find ways to fire Harbaugh. I mean, it was a good play. I mean, you look at it's just unlucky. Andrews, it was both. Lamar threw it a little bit. Andrews maybe should have caught it.
Yeah.
I mean, looking at the Ravens not making the playoffs, I think something we've talked about, the NFL is so confusing because, it's like, all right, we finally have this team that's good. We know they are. They're going to push. I think the Cardinals Packers besides week 1. I think the Cardinals through week 1 to now have been the only team where you haven't really questioned if they
over
will
the entire season. Yeah,
exactly. The Packers that week 1 was like, what the hell?
and then for the rest of the season,
and then the rest of the season they've been great. The Bucks are exactly like they were last season. Looking at the stats,
which is why they could go to the Super Bowl again easily.
And then the Ravens to
can't
me,
count them out.
Yeah, I mean the Ravens to me, I don't think they will miss the playoffs.
I think they're too good of a team led by too good of a quarterback.
Yeah.
It's just Lamar Jackson will find ways to come up clutch, and that's all it's going to come down to. I know their run game has been crushed by the loss of multiple running backs, but when you have Lamar Jackson, it's too hard for them to miss out at this point. I don't think they will.
Yeah. At 8-4, you're such an advantageous position, and even though they do have tough opponents, they can
easily win 2 or 3 of those games, and that gives them a wild card spot.
I think 10 wins gets you playoffs.
Yeah, it should.
And I think not. Yeah. I would argue they will make wild card. I think the question is more: are they not wild card teams?
Yeah.
Never mind.
I mean, I still think they're going to win the division.
Yeah.
Like if it's up to me.
Should we go into our AFC North one actually now? Since
let's move on to. All right, let's move on to another. Yeah, let's move on to the AFC.
Yeah.
North.
Let's keep going. Yeah, AFC North. Super confusing division so far this season. We looked at the Bengals early on, looked really, really strong. Then they dropped some games, just like Jamar Chase dropped some passes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
and the Ravens also looked really, really strong and then dropped some games as well. The Steelers, some meaningless wins in the beginning, made them look really, really good and then dropped off. And the Browns looked good in week 1 in the loss to the Chiefs and then also dropped off. So I think right now, for me, all these teams are trending downward. But what do we think? Who's winning this division?
Yeah, that's the question. Because you look at last week, and the Steelers win, but that's not. I mean, they're still in contention technically, but they're not a problem to me. Big Ben. Again, I say that, but Big Ben has experience, so I mean, he maybe makes the playoffs.
I mean, he hasn't been necessarily terrible recently.
And the Bengals have been up, down, up. I mean, they lose by 40, win by 40. Getting blown out by the Chargers, and then obviously we just touched on the Ravens. I think. And then the Browns, to me, I think are out. I think, another video we have done, I don't think this team is I mean, they just have not met expectations. Obviously, Baker Mayfield, and then we looking at that. But I want to talk because we kind of just talked about really who is going to win it. We just talked about the AFC North within that mailbag question.
Yeah.
We can go back. I want to talk about this. We had an argument about this. The original question is how many players are more valuable than TJ Watt. I want to talk about Myles Garett against TJ Watt.
Yep.
Interesting.
The numbers point towards Watt. Dylan, other host not here, points towards Garett. I think we all points towards Watt. Right?
I've watched the Steelers a lot because some of my family members are Steelers fans.
Yeah.
I think he is the most valuable non-quarterback in the league.
That's a good.
I'm putting TJ Watt at number 2 for me.
This team is
Aaron Donald.
Aaron Donald has been great, but I'm talking about just this year on a this year basis. This Steelers defense is, I think,
shambles.
is shambles without him. He is such a key player. Again, 16 sacks in just 10 games. That's unbelievable.
I didn't even notice that. It's out of no. I did
He's incredible.
Not know
It's a quiet.
And I think
he had
sacks
3.5 against the Ravens.
He's
tore up their O-line.
He's single-handedly won the game against the Ravens. He had 3
He has chunk sack games. 3.5 sack, a forced fumble, no sack, 1 sack, then 3 against the Bears.
And don't forget that thing that didn't and what didn't show up on the stat line where he pressured Lamar Jackson into missing that Mark Andrews throw that definitely basically won them the game.
Mm-hmm.
He is by far, in my opinion, the most valuable defensive player. I think Garrett's been great this season. I think it's unfortunate because he's also had a hell of a season. But when you're going against what T.J. Watt is doing this season, I just can't see how you can say that he doesn't deserve to win DPOY, because I think the Steelers are a bottom feeder in this division if it isn't for T.J. Watt.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like T.J. Watt, you look at like not historically, but so far throughout his career, he's been arguably robbed of Defensive Player of the Year several
Last year.
So to me, it comes. Yeah, I mean, I think you look at the stats and it points towards Watt, but then Garett has just been so disruptive, and it doesn't take away from how good he is, but I think Garrett's been very good.
I just think TJ Watt's the more valuable player right now. I don't know about better because they're both so talented, but the value that TJ Watt brings to that Steelers defense is incredible. But I think, Suraj, did you want to say any more on that? Or
No,
because I want to say for the AFC North that I think that the Steelers still have a shot at winning the division. I know we may count them out, but the thing that the Steelers have over the rest of the teams in the division is their remaining schedule. Steelers go to Minnesota, and the Vikings will be very demoralized after a Lions loss. Then they host Tennessee without Derrick Henry. They go to Kansas City, which will probably be a loss. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. They host Cleveland. Cleveland has looked awful.
Yeah.
And then in a must-win game in Week 18, against the Ravens in Baltimore, we've seen Big Ben do it before, and if there's one thing that Big Ben brings to the team is his experience and his ability to win.
Tongue twister.
His ability to win the clutch games. I mean, the game that I remember most fondly of Big Ben is against the Bengals in that Week 17 matchup. I don't think the Steelers had a shot at making playoffs, but they could take the spot away from the Bengals or the Browns, whoever it was they were playing. And Big Ben got injured in the fourth quarter and still played. It was an arm injury, so he couldn't throw the ball more than 10 yards. He looked like Tua for a quarter. And they still got the job done and won the game. And if there's one thing that I think Big Ben can do is beat the Ravens in a Week 18 matchup. You look at the Ravens, they may only have one win left this season. They've got a tough schedule coming up. It's going to be tough. They go to Cleveland. I think that's the only hopefully good win.
Bengals,
but Hackers have looked really good. They go to Cincinnati and play the Bengals. That's a really hard game to win. They host the Rams. The Rams are a good team. You can't discount them on any day. And then that Steelers matchup. And I think, if the Ravens go 1-4 to end the season and the Steelers go 4-1 to end the season, that gives the Steelers the top spot in the AFC North. I don't think the Steelers will go 4-1, but I'm saying it's definitely a possibility. I'm going to put the Ravens as my top spot in the AFC North, though.
Yeah, for me, I think every team has a chance in the AFC North, even the Browns. Because the thing is, none of the teams are consistent enough to say that, there's no way this team can catch up from this. Because I think the Browns, are the lowest seed. They're
6 Browns, 6.
They're just 2 games behind.
So they're 2 games. Yeah, they're 2 games out, and I think the Ravens will drop at least 2 more games. And I think every team, if any team goes on a hot streak at this point, they will win the division. Because I don't see any of the other teams are really consistent enough to say, this team will definitely run away with it. Mm-hmm. My pick is the Bengals. And the reason why is because I think just on a talent basis, they have probably the most talent, and they probably, especially on the offensive side of the ball, they're a pretty well-coached team. They seem to be, even though they lost their Chargers, I think they're a pretty cohesive team. They can still, and they've got, I think they're kind of, I feel like a miniature Cowboys almost. I know it sounds weird, but they've got a great running back in Joe Mixon. They got 3 great receivers in Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins. You got T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Tyler Boyd. And you've got, I think their defense also hasn't been that bad either. They got Trey Hendrickson, Ogunjobi, Reeder. In the secondary, got Mike Hilton, Jesse Bates, of course, who's a huge part. Logan Wilson. I think on a talent base, I think Cincinnati have the best team. And I think they'll lose games too. But that being said, I think they'll lose less games than everyone else. And
my problem with the Bengals, though, I don't know that they will lose less games because they do have a tough schedule. They host the Niners, who have looked good.
I think they can beat the Niners.
I do think they can beat the Niners. Then they go to Denver. That's a very winnable game. They host Baltimore. That'll be possibly the game that decides top spot. Then they host the Chiefs. Probably not a win. And then they're at Cleveland.
See, I think they win the Niners game. I think they win the Ravens game. And I think they win the Browns game. But I think they lose to the Broncos.
But the Browns, it's in Cleveland. Like, that's a game the Browns could be fighting for a playoff spot.
They could be, but I think the Browns, I just don't, I mean, I think it's just hard to pick the Browns. I think they could easily win this. Like, again, it's like, that's why this division is so weird and confusing. Like, anyone could beat anyone.
No,
but
for sure.
The Browns have been, based on just standards of what it's been like this season, I think it's hard to pick the Browns, even though they did beat the Bengals early season pretty convincingly. You don't know what Browns teams to show up. You don't know what Bengals team is going to show up, but that's just I would personally predict the.
Yeah. All right, AFC North. I think we have a good grasp on.
So who do you have as your top spot?
My top spot would be the Ravens.
Okay.
I think the Steelers will get second. I think the Bengals will get third. No, I think the Bengals. I think
the Bengals have second.
Yeah, and then I think the
Browns. And then it's Steelers.
Last.
It's Steelers for wild card spot. I don't know. We'll see.
I honestly think every single variation of how this could pan out are like equally. This doesn't make sense.
Probable.
Equally probable. Yeah.
Yeah.
All
so
right.
Let's go on to a mailbag question.
Let's go on to AFC North. Or sorry, let's go back. I'm joking. Let's go on to the Lions win because I want to talk about that because that was recent.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that first.
Lions won a game.
Congrats.
Let's clap it up for the Lions.
Congrats.
Dan Campbell's Church of Football is back open. And I want to preface this. Dan Campbell is not a good head coach. Any head coach that loses 10 games in a row and ties a game.
And also, there's some of them were on his coaching decisions.
And exactly, erratic calling in the back end of games. And this game, again, was it coaching or was it Cam Dantzler didn't play cushion on a must not let catch play? That doesn't make sense. That was me using my old time speaking. But the win to me is sentimental. The Lions won. What does it mean? Probably not much. I think this is more a reflection on the Vikings, what this means to the Vikings than, oh my God, this Lions team is going to go win out, because it's not going to happen. When you look at this game, what went wrong for the Vikings and kind of, the Lions win a game, like what do you think about this one?
Well, I'm going to start with saying I predicted the Lions to beat the Bears last week, and the Lions lost 16-14 to a game-winning field goal. And I'm also going to say the Lions have not looked like a bad team in the last 4 weeks.
Oh, yeah, no.
4 weeks ago, they tied the Steelers 16-16. Then they lost to the Browns 13-10, lost to the Bears 16-14, and then took a pretty good Vikings team 29-27. The Lions have only lost by more than one score 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times this season. And for a 1-10-1 team, that's not that bad. Only 3 of those games were blowouts, and we said that they were such a bad team. Only really 3 games were blowouts. And, I mean, the Lions have looked pretty good. And the Vikings, obviously a lot went wrong. To lose to this winless team, it was a close one. A last-second touchdown. I don't know what the hell happened. I don't know how they let him so open. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a good game. Credit to him. But, Suraj, what really went wrong for the Vikings?
I think this has to be the time where you consider maybe pulling the plug on Mike Zimmer. I think you just can't lose that game. And that last sequence, like, why is Cameron Dantzler playing cushion on a you have to stop them, keep them ahead of the.
They need to get the end zone with 6 seconds left.
I hate this. Mike Zimmer's a good defensive coach. He is not. You let up 29 points to the Lions.
To Jared Goff, who's been awful.
And Amon-Ra St. Brown,
who had 10 receptions for 86 yards.
It's the most points the Lions have scored this season by over 10.
Yeah, I mean,
by 10.
Yeah,
I lied. Week 1.
It's been. I mean, the fourth down gamble, chasing points too early. It's just been Zimmer's issue this entire season. And me and Dylan said this in our preview for the Vikings. That he's just not a very good head coach. The Vikings probably don't have some crazy aspirations for this season, like a Super Bowl, but they would have liked to be a playoff team and like to compete with the Packers, which I think the form Cousins has been in was possible, and Justin Jefferson has been on. Obviously it was impossible losing Cook, and now Thielen, I believe, is also out. Yeah. But injuries at this point aren't really an excuse. Every single team. I of course, besides probably the Bucks, every single team has had injuries. But I mean, looking at the Vikings, I think look at the team, great, defensively terrible. It's a young secondary. We know that Patrick Peterson, obviously has not been great. But again, never put the blame on one person unless it's egregiously their fault. But this is Mike Zimmer. This is a Mike Zimmer loss. And I think, to your point, pulling the plug should definitely be an option.
I think actually maybe a bit of a hot take, but I think the Vikings could actually be contenders in the NFC if they had a good coach. Because I think the weapons on the offense, it's insanely good. They've got Kirk Cousins, who's playing like a top 10 quarterback this season. I think he's a very good quarterback.
Top 5 at certain points.
Arguably, yes. And you've got two, I'd say, elite receivers, Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, both who are great in their own ways. Adam Thielen, he seems to always find the end zone, and Jefferson, he's like that main guy. You got an elite running back in Dalvin Cook, so offensive line, a defense that
and Madison who's
been great, and the defense isn't terrible. I think there's
That's
talent.
where I disagree.
There's talent. No, they're dealing with injuries, sure, but they've got Eric Kendricks, they got Harrison Smith. I mean, they don't have much of a secondary, but they got Barr and linebacker. They got Danielle Hunter. I mean.
Danielle Hunter's out.
I know, but I'm saying hypothetically, if they were to stay healthy.
But it's the defense where it kills me because, they have the offensive talent. Kirk Cousins, I know you quickly dismissed this yesterday, but he is playing like an MVP in my mind. I don't think he'll win, but he has 3,353 yards, 25 touchdowns, and just 3 interceptions this season. Only one of those has come in the last 8 weeks. And in those 8 weeks, he's got 15 touchdowns to 1 interception.
Oh, he's been great.
He's playing amazingly. Justin Jefferson is a top receiver in the NFL right now. Adam Thielen's playing like a top 10, 15 receiver in the NFL. Yeah. Dalvin Cook, of course, we know how good he is. Alexander Madison starts for most teams in the NFL. Where they do lack is defense. 5 of the last 7 weeks, they've let up 28-plus points. And that's just really not giving the offense a chance to show what they can do. And they lost 34-31 against the Ravens in overtime. Beat the Chargers 27-20. 20 points is still not great. They did win the game. They beat the Packers 34-31. Their offense was able to do enough. They lost to the Niners 34-26, a close game, but their defense just didn't hold on long enough. And then lost to the Lions 29-27. And it's just not good enough. Even when they played the Packers, this is now 7 weeks ago, they let up 28 points to the Panthers team that just isn't very good. They only won 34-28 in overtime, and it's not good enough. Their defense just hasn't looked very good to me, and that's why they're not a contender. I agree. Mike Zimmer has not been great, but even with a new coach, they would need some defensive improvements.
I think they would need some defensive improvements, especially in secondary. But in terms of talent, I think overall with their offense that I feel like is elite in terms of talent, and their defense I don't think is terrible. I think it can be an average to even slightly above average defense, and I think in the NFL you can work with that when you have that much talent on the offensive side of the ball, which, again, but the point I'm trying to make is that really this team with the talent they have shouldn't be 5-7.
Oh, yeah.
And I think they could. That's
where I think the Kirk Cousins MVP, because do you think winning is a quarterback stat or should be?
Yes.
To a certain extent, yes. But
I would say the only person who does not apply that was Deshaun Watson.
There are exceptions. It's not just Deshaun Watson.
Because Deshaun Watson
there
was
are
fantastic
exceptions.
last. Remember, he was on that most passing yards. I mean, again, it comes down to defensively. Whatever. I mean, the teams that win the Super Bowls are generally very rounded teams. And the Vikings, of course, they are not, but I think they're on the right path. Yeah. But then the question to me comes down to, is Kirk Cousins the guy for when that happens, or is it Kellen Mond?
I think it's definitely Kirk Cousins. I mean,
Cousins.
I would say I think Kirk Cousins can win a Super Bowl with this team if he has a solid defense and a good coach. And I think their defense, if they stay healthy, add some secondary help, get a good coach, Vikings can easily be contenders.
Yeah.
But you'd want to make sure that you don't, because Adam Thielen, he's how old now? Like 30s, early 30s, I think.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you get like the best out of what's left of his window, so you can really contend in his final years where he is a top 15 receiver in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And I think the Vikings really have a chance to be a very good team and should go all in.
Yeah, but another part where they've looked good, I guess. Their sack numbers, 36 sacks this year. Mm-hmm. But I think we should head into the next topic. And should I do a question first, or
what do you want?
I think let's go to the mailbag, okay. And that's gonna be Is Jalen Hurts the guy?
I love it.
That's my question.
I like that.
Is Jalen Hurts the guy?
Yeah. That's a great question. We're Giants fans, so obviously same division. I think he is. I think what Jalen Hurts reminds me of is high end. I think this guy could be a Russell Wilson-like player. Obviously mobile, has been able to kind of find his groove with this Eagles offense. Obviously finding Devontae Smith, who I think they completely nailed that pick on. Again, the wonder always goes to what if we had Justin Jefferson. But, he's been good. I think the question to me as of recent, looking at it, 45 – I mean, that Giants game really, probably, pump the brakes a little bit on Jalen Hurts being their guy. But this season's been great. I mean, 2,430 – not great, excuse me. 60% completion, good. He's not below 60. That's good. He's on the cuff. 83.9 passer rating, obviously 2,400 yards. But then the touchdown to interceptions to me is a bit of a question. But 8 interceptions, only having 8, when it gets to double digits, that's when I start to get a little bit iffy. And I think if we look, if you're looking at this 5 years ago, he's 6'1", this guy can't be it. But, obviously looking at the quarterbacks now, Kyler Murray, and some of the smaller guys, I think he is. I think he's been able to win games. I think the Eagles right now, I think that loss definitely put them back a step, but the Eagles right now are arguably a team that can go and win this division. I wouldn't say probably this season, probably not anymore. I'd say Washington and Cowboys, but I'm saying he's a guy who I think has shown that he can win games, and that's what I look for in quarterbacks. Win games. The stats are good. He hasn't been egregious in any games. So I would say yes. I think he is.
You want to go or should I go?
Go for it.
I'm torn because I feel like he's showed and it hasn't just been one moment, but he's shown stretches where you feel like, yeah, he's definitely the guy. He could arguably be a top 10 quarterback. And then he has that game against the Giants where he throws for no touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He completely neutralized without his legs. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, I wouldn't say he's the guy automatically, but I also wouldn't be like, oh, I'm on the Gardner Minshew train. Go trade Hurts. He's not the guy. I think you got to give him time because it's only second year, and he hasn't done enough to impress and say that, oh yeah, he's automatically the guy.
I think so.
But he hasn't done enough also at the same time to say, oh, he's automatically a bust. He's done much more than he's done decent for his position. Mm-hmm. And I think you've got to I think the Eagles offense still has a lack of talent at the skill position. So maybe get another receiver. Mm-hmm. They can get probably, I know they have the leading rushing game, but that feels so weird because I feel like they don't have. Yeah. They never use the. They
Sanders
don't have a
never gets the ball.
They don't have a consistent running back.
Last week, or was it? Wait, when did the Giants play?
Last week.
Who the Eagles play this week? The Eagles are on
the Jets. They play
Jets. Oh, okay. Why? I don't know.
That's when Myles Sanders had a good game that week.
Yeah, that's what
his first
they
game.
Don't have a
his stats aren't updated on Google. Excuse me. Continue.
It's just I think they need to get weapons around him. Mm-hmm. To kind of really figure out whether or not he is the guy. But at the moment, I feel like the jury's still out.
I mean, they're 6-7.
They're 6-7. They're not a bad team.
And what I like to look at with Hurts, like as you said,
6-7 with this Eagles roster. So.
Right. I think he hasn't done enough yet to be like, okay, he's our guy, 100%. Yes, we're all in for Jalen Hurts. We're gonna offer him a mega deal, etc. But he also has done enough to let them say, well, we have to keep him around. Because he's playing well, he's winning us games. We're 6-7, and we have other needs that are much bigger than Jalen Hurts right now.
2 first-round picks this
with
year.
2 first-round picks, that's 3 first-round picks, right?
Holy
2 early,
crap, yeah.
and then
2
1
back-to-back.
mid to late, and they can really improve their defense with those picks and grab another receiver for Jalen Hurts. Now, what I like to look at with Jalen Hurts is if you take away just the Giants game, he has 13 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, which is a lot better than looking at 13 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. And I will give any quarterback the benefit of the doubt. If you just take away one game, they say, okay, he had an awful game. Like Aaron Rodgers in week 1 just had an awful game. And I'm like, we know Aaron Rodgers is good enough. We've seen his other games and he's playing well. He just had a bad game. It happens to everyone. Happens to the best of them.
I don't like the Minshew should start over Jalen Hurts.
I hate that.
I hate that.
It's awful.
I really don't like that.
He's a good backup.
Like
That's it.
I wouldn't say I don't know what Minshew is yet, but I think the fact that he was able to do it against the Jets, I mean, he should.
Wow.
It's like he should be able to do that. I mean, I think if Hurts
Jets
is in that
fan.
position, he does the same thing. I mean, maybe he doesn't throw it maybe for as much as he'll run
40.
I'm not sure
Yeah,
because
But
it's
also,
hypothetical.
it's the curse of the backup quarterbacks this year. They win game 1 and then they get crushed
yeah,
game 2.
What happens if Minshew the Eagles front office listens to the fans and start Minshew again and he just completely bombs
and then
out?
and then we laugh at them for starting him.
Exactly.
They just can't do it because Jalen Hurts is the starter and there should be no one else in
and
the
I think that's what they've been trying to say. They're saying that no matter what Minshew does, Hurts is still going to be our starter.
Hurts is the guy.
I think it's the right decision.
I don't hate arguing against a starting or a backup starting if they're playing obviously better, but Hurts to me has not shown.
Yeah, it's not like he's been terrible this season. I think he's been a
he
very
had one
solid
bad game.
quarterback.
That's it.
Yeah, and I mean, and it wasn't even. I mean, it was 13-7. Let's not. This isn't obviously scoring points, but I think the Minshew thing again. My whole thing has been there has been one quarterback. There's the wonder quarterbacks, the Mike Whites, the Minshews, who go in. They have those great games. It's like, oh my god, this guy's the future of our franchise. And then there's the Heineke's. Heineke, and I'm sure there's others who I'm forgetting. Heineke has been the only one, which I talked about in our weekly predictions, who has been okay. I can actually consistently win games and play and actually be a good quarterback. Mike White has literally fell off the face of the earth. Gardner Minshew, no. I'm trying to think who the other one's been. Minshew.
Cam Newton.
No, but I'm talking about guys who no-name guys. Like we didn't even know them.
Simeon?
And
Well, Minshew's been.
Yeah, the Simeon who beats the Bucks. Heineke obviously has been the only guy. So I would say that the Minshew Hurts debate, maybe it has some validity to you guys, but not to us.
Yeah.
Yep. But that was a great question.
Yeah, shout out. We want to.
That one.
Questions were asked first. Justin. Thank you for the Ravens question, and that was by Jack Sturp on Instagram. Thank you. For that.
Let's move on to our next topic, and that's going to be, I hope, an interesting one.
Yes.
And that's we're looking at the NFL draft, maybe a little bit early. We don't see a lot of top quarterbacks there, of course, with Malik Willis and completely blanking on his name,
Matt Corral.
But in your mind, Cian, who are the top 5 teams that need a quarterback? And with this not great quarterback class, how should they go about getting that quarterback?
Yeah, and I think it's not just draft. I think the quarterbacks in general, free agency trades.
Yeah.
Just who are the 5 teams that need quarterback going 1 to 5? Or no, we're gonna go. Yeah, we'll go 1 to 5. I'll go 1, you'll go 1, you'll go 1, and then we'll go down quickly through our list. All right, so 1 to me is the Steelers. I don't like Big Ben. I think he's as mobile as a tree. He's just not been someone. Potato Ben, the catchphrase. I was gonna say we'll make merch. Probably won't, but we should. Again, I think to me, looking at the draft, and again, I'm not gonna give specific draft quarterbacks they should go for. I think Kenny Pick would be a fantastic option. Obviously, we've seen this guy's really mobile in the pocket, and then very comparable to Joe Burrow. So that fight would be very much fun to watch. And then again, as I said, Big Ben to me has been someone who I think should have been gone or should have been replaced 2 years ago. Should have retired 2 years ago. I think, it's just the subpar play that he brings in certain weeks to me just kills the Steelers. And if the Steelers had a good quarterback, this team, we could see this team being Super Bowl contenders. I really do think Big Ben has been the kryptonite to this team. And then again, I don't want to hate on Big Ben. This guy's a fantastic quarterback. He'll be a Hall of Famer. And then I guess certain points this season, obviously beating the Ravens, he's been like, okay, maybe he's not that bad. But to me, I think it is the Steelers are the team that need a quarterback the most. I want to preface, I don't have the Lions or Texans on this list because I've started to become such a big advocate. Don't draft a quarterback if you don't have anything around them. It just hurts their careers. I think we've seen that with Trevor Lawrence. We've seen that with Fields, Lawrence, and Wilson. I would say more or less. And Mac Jones, great coach, good defense, offense that's serviceable. He's been great. So that's why I don't think the Texans or Lions. I think Tyrod's fine. I think Goff will probably stay another year. And I think they're just going to go best available. Exactly. Steelers are one for me.
Yeah, exactly right. I think I just want to agree with you on that point. Like, I see a lot of mock drafts having the Texans taking Corral at 2. And I'm like, no. I mean, you don't need – it's not like Corral's like a once-in-a-generation prospect.
That's the problem this year.
You need to – I think no matter what, even if you get him, how much really is that going to help you winning? You're not going to win a lot more games even if you draft him. Why not draft the best player available for now and then build around the team? You want to build around the team, and then you want maybe when the quarterbacks, you can say, okay, it's the quarterback that's holding us back. Then you go for the quarterback. But at the moment, for some of these bad teams, when there's not an elite quarterback in the draft, don't take one if you have so many other pressing needs. But personally, I actually have to agree with you. I think the Steelers are the team that do need a quarterback the most because they've got the most. I think they've got a lot of weapons in the skill position. They've got a lot to work with on both sides of the ball. And And with the recent report that Ben has said that, okay, this is going to be my final year, the only in-house options are Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins. And Mason Rudolph has had games. He's clearly not the answer. Haskins, from what I've seen, he doesn't seem to be that great either. I think the Steelers have to go on the mindset with whether in the draft, maybe draft like Corral or Pickett, or in free agency, who knows, maybe even go to trade for Wilson or Rodgers or Watson. But
I want to, because Charlie's have to leave, I want to do the Dolphins Tua. I want to talk about that. So let's just go through the teams that need quarterbacks.
All right, I'm going to just say I have a different number one, and that's the Atlanta Falcons. Okay. Obviously, Matt Ryan hitting right around the same age as Big Ben. Don't fact check me on that, but it's around the same age. And what the Steelers do have that the Falcons don't is a plethora of backup quarterbacks that are serviceable enough for next season.
For the Falcons?
No, for the Steelers.
But Josh Rosen's a great backup.
Oh.
For the Falcons.
but the Steelers also don't have a top 10 pick. And if I'm the Falcons, I'm sitting at pick number 9 right now. This season's over. That's it. I'm dropping a little bit. I'm trying to get as high as I possibly can because I need to draft quarterback. Now, if I'm any of the teams that are ahead of the Falcons, and that's right now the Lions, who we have said should not take quarterback. The Jaguars just drafted Trevor Lawrence. The Texans. Do we think the Texans should take quarterback? No, because of Davis Mills, I think. The Jets, Zach Wilson. The Giants.
Maybe.
No.
But
the Giants, I think, personally, Daniel Jones is okay for another year. Then again to the Jets, then again to the Giants. The Panthers could foreseeably take quarterback. But even if the Panthers take quarterback, then that leaves the Falcons with the next quarterback, and that leaves them with either Matt Corral or Malik Willis. There are no top free agent quarterbacks this year. So unless they want to trade for... No, he's not.
Sorry, he signed that deal. You're right.
He's not.
Right.
Not in the top 100 free agents, I believe, is there a quarterback. So you're not going to be able to sign one.
Winston, maybe.
I don't think so, because I didn't see the name at least.
Well, Winston is a free agent.
But whatever it is, Winston's also probably not that guy. So if they want to draft quarterback, or if they want to trade that first-round pick for a quarterback, I don't know how much value one first-round pick is going to get you. They might have to give up next year's 2, and I think they have too weak of a roster to do that. And then I know you said you don't like drafting quarterbacks to teams that aren't ready for quarterbacks, and I don't think the Falcons are ready for a quarterback defensively. But they've got 2 second-round picks. Could be used towards guys like Nick Bonito, or if someone like Devin Lloyd drops. You can use those second-round picks very well, and they have a third-round pick and then 4 picks on day 3, I believe. So they've got enough picks this draft to fill some holes with the later round picks, and I think quarterback's the way to go with that pick number 9 currently, and if they can drop even more, that would be really good for them, because then they have their choice of which the guy they want to lead their dynasty. And if it's Malik Willis, I think it's really good because he can potentially sit for a year behind Matt Ryan, which is a really good way to introduce someone to the NFL, I think. But let's go through. I've got the Steelers at number 2. Then we both have the Saints. I've got them at 3. You've got them at 4. I have Washington as my number 5.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't put them. I
think Heineke's fine. But I think Washington needs to draft a quarterback. Their team looks pretty solid right now. Yeah. And then we both have the Panthers on the list. You have them higher than I do at number 2. I've got them at number 4. I just think because, again, like the Steelers, they have a group of quarterbacks in the locker room with Sam Darnold, P.J. Walker, and Cam Newton, none of who are very good, but they're good enough to win you a few games and hold you over to the next season to maybe see if you can drop to that number 1 pick and take Bryce Young.